Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping inside Korean hospitals, places built for healing, where families hold hands in waiting rooms and patients cling to the hope of recovery. By day, they're busy and reassuring, full of voices, footsteps, and the hum of medical machines. You'll smell disinfectant in the air, sometimes even incense from small shrines that families quietly set up. But when night falls, everything changes. The visitors go home, the lights dim, and the long white corridors feel a little too empty. Fluorescent bulbs buzz overhead, and every sound seems sharper. The beeping of machines, the roll of a cart, the echo of your own footsteps. It's in those hours between midnight and dawn that stories start to surface. Some speak of the Dalgyeolgwishin, the egg ghost, a faceless spirit said to wander places where identity is fragile. And in one Seoul hospital, a witness saw something that made her question what really lingers in those late-night halls. Let's call her Min-jung, a 29-year-old nurse who had worked the night shift at Seoul's Asan Medical Center for nearly 4 years. She was meticulous and calm, the kind of professional families trusted and colleagues relied on. Asan is one of Korea's leading hospitals, a place of science and healing. But like all large institutions, it has its quiet corners that feel different after midnight. Min-jung's routine was steady, starting with cardiac patients, moving through surgical wards, and ending with the pediatric floor. The children there were always the hardest, restless, fragile, watched over by anxious parents. On one late October night, however, the ward was unusually calm. Only 3 rooms were occupied, and for once, all was quiet, or so it seemed. As Min-jung finished updating a chart, she noticed a figure at the far end of the pediatric corridor, a woman in a pale blue hospital gown, standing perfectly still, her long black hair falling over her shoulders. At first, Min-jung assumed it was a lost patient, someone disoriented, perhaps on the wrong floor. The pediatric ward was restricted, but mistakes happened. "Excuse me," she called softly, careful not to wake the children. "Do you need help finding your room?" The woman didn't respond. She didn't even breathe. The air grew colder, the fluorescent lights dimmer, and the shadows around her stretched unnaturally long. "Ajuma," Min-jung said gently. "Let me help you." The woman began to turn. Min-jung braced for a confused patient, maybe bandaged after surgery. Instead, she saw a face that wasn't there. No eyes, no mouth, no scars, just smooth, pale skin, blank as an eggshell framed by long black hair. For a moment, Min-jung's medical instincts fought her fear. Could it be a rare condition? Heavy bandages? But the longer she stared, the more certain she became. This wasn't medical. It wasn't possible. The faceless woman stood silently, then turned and walked toward the emergency stairwell. Her gown rustled softly, her steps soundless. When Min-jung checked moments later, the stairwell was empty, and the locked door had never been opened. Min-jung spent the rest of the night searching for answers. Maybe it was trauma, or heavy bandages, or simply exhaustion playing tricks. She even researched rare conditions the next day, but nothing explained that perfectly blank face. When she returned the following night, she came prepared, with a stronger penlight and her phone ready. The pediatric ward was busier, with 5 rooms occupied and parents keeping quiet vigils. The activity made her feel safer, yet her eyes kept drifting to the far end of the corridor. At 11:47 p.m., she saw her again. Same pale gown, same spot. But this time, the faceless woman wasn't turned away. She was facing directly at Min-jung, her blank visage fixed on her as though only she could see. As she watched, the faceless woman began to walk, not toward Min-jung, but away from her, moving with deliberate slowness down the corridor toward the main elevators. The woman's gait was steady, purposeful, as if she had a specific destination in mind. Against every instinct of self-preservation, Min-jung found herself following. The woman led her past the nurse's station, where her colleague Su-jin sat absorbed in paperwork, completely oblivious to the passing figures, and into the main corridor that connected the various ward wings. The hospital at night felt different from the bustling daytime environment. Longer shadows, more echo, an atmosphere of suspended activity that made every footstep seem unnaturally loud. The faceless woman glided through the hospital's maze of corridors, turning with uncanny certainty. Min-jung followed at a careful distance, close enough not to lose her, far enough to feel safe. They passed silent offices, old portraits of the hospital's founders, and dim storage halls, places Min-jung rarely entered. Finally, the figure stopped before a door marked "Renovation in Progress. Authorized personnel only." It led to the old surgical wing, sealed for months. The woman turned her blank face toward the door. At once the air grew icy, her breath misting in the cold. Overhead, the fluorescent lights flickered violently. Then, with a quiet click, the locked door swung open by itself, revealing only darkness within. The faceless woman paused at the threshold, her blank face turned back toward Min-jung. An invitation, or perhaps a challenge. The air shifted, carrying not disinfectant, but the sharp, old scent of ether and metal, like surgical tools long unused. Without a word, the figure slipped into the darkness beyond. The door stayed open, cold air spilling out, laced with faint whispers that might have been voices, or just the groan of forgotten pipes. Min-jung lingered, heart pounding, torn between duty and fear. In the end, fear won. She retreated to the safety of the pediatric ward. By morning, the renovation door was locked and chained again, as if nothing had ever opened it. By the third night, Min-jung made a choice that defied instinct. She would follow the faceless woman, but not alone. She confided in Park Dong-woo, a veteran security guard who admitted he'd heard strange reports over the years. Patients seeing figures in empty halls, families thanking a nurse who didn't exist. He had always dismissed them as grief or fatigue, until now. Min-jung came prepared, phone charged and camera ready. If it's real, I'll have proof. If it's me, I'll know that too, she told herself. They took position at the pediatric ward, Dong-woo waiting by the elevators. At 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes later than usual, the figure appeared. This time, Min-jung was ready. She lifted her phone. Through the screen, the woman was faint, almost translucent, but unmistakably there. "She's here," Min-jung whispered, "and she's moving." The faceless woman walked steadily toward the renovation wing, Min-jung following while Dong-woo shadowed them through parallel corridors. The path was the same as before, past offices, portraits, and storage halls until they reached the locked construction door. It opened at her approach. The air turned icy, the lights flickered, and the faint smell of old ether seeped out. "I'm going in," Min-jung whispered. "Wait for me," Dong-woo answered. She stepped inside with her phone's flashlight. The corridor beyond was older than the rest of the hospital. Dated tiles, worn fixtures, a design from decades past. Dong-woo joined her, scanning the walls. "This is part of the original hospital," he murmured. "I thought this wing was completely gutted." Ahead, the faceless woman waited before a heavy door marked 413. Deep scratches ringed the lock, as if someone inside had once tried desperately to escape. The faceless woman turned toward them, and for the first time Min-jung felt emotion. An overwhelming sadness, deeper than fear. The door to room 413 swung open. Inside, patient files lay scattered across the floor, yellowed with age. Min-jung's light caught dates from 1987, names of patients, and repeated notes on facial reconstruction and experimental treatments. Dong-woo picked one up, his voice tightening. Surgical records. Every outcome, unsuccessful or deceased. Among the papers were photos of disfigured patients, unsigned consent forms, and even a note instructing staff to dispose of records to avoid liability. "This was a cover-up," Min-jung whispered. The faceless woman moved closer. In the beam, her blank skin showed faint depressions, traces of features erased. Slowly, she raised a hand and pointed to one file. It read, Kim Yeon-hui, age 34. Reconstruction after accident. The final entry was chilling. Patient identity compromised. Case closed. Her identity, her very face, had been taken. The room grew colder, and Min-jung realized they weren't alone. In the shifting shadows stood more figures, 15 in total, all in hospital gowns, all faceless like the woman who had led them here. Their files lay scattered across the floor. 15 patients whose lives and identities had been erased. The woman hadn't sought revenge, only acknowledgement, recognition, the dignity of being remembered. Min-jung met her blank gaze. "We see you," she whispered. "You won't be forgotten." For a moment the figures lingered, and Min-jung swore she felt gratitude radiating through the cold. Then, one by one, they faded, leaving only the files. She and Dong-woo photographed everything before the area was sealed again. Officially, it was explained away as old records scattered by water damage, but Min-jung knew better. Her research confirmed the truth. In 1987, patients had been used for untested reconstruction surgeries. When they died, their files were altered and their identities erased. Families were misled, and the hospital buried the evidence. Exposing it would hurt the institution. Hiding it would betray the dead. Min-jung chose a middle path. Working with the hospital chaplain, a compassionate woman who understood that healing sometimes required acknowledging past wounds, Min-jung arranged for a small memorial service. It was held in the hospital chapel on a quiet Sunday morning, attended by current medical staff and a few family members of the forgotten patients whom Min-jung had managed to locate through careful research. The memorial plaque was modest, placed in a corner of the chapel where families often came to pray for their loved ones. It read simply, in both Korean and English, in memory of those who suffered in silence. May their sacrifice guide us toward greater compassion and truth in healing. The change was immediate and profound. The renovation area, when finally reopened months later, felt different, lighter, more peaceful. Staff members reported that the oppressive atmosphere that had lingered around that section of the hospital for years seemed to have lifted. Minjung never saw the faceless woman again, but she began to notice other small signs of spiritual peace. Families sitting in the chapel reported feeling comforted by a gentle presence during their most difficult moments. Patients in the reconstructed surgical wing experienced fewer complications and faster recovery times. The hospital's overall atmosphere seemed more harmonious, as if acknowledging past wrongs had created space for better healing. More importantly, the incident inspired changes in the hospital's approach to patient records and family communication. New protocols were established to ensure that no patient's identity or suffering would ever again be erased from official memory. In Korean tradition, the Dalgyal Gwishin, the egg ghost, represents more than simple supernatural terror. These faceless spirits embody the profound cultural fear of having one's identity erased, of being forgotten or deliberately ignored. In a society where family lineage, personal honor, and social recognition are fundamental to human dignity, the complete erasure of facial features symbolizes the ultimate violation. The smooth, featureless face isn't just disturbing, it's a representation of administrative violence, of institutional power used to make inconvenient people disappear. Korean folklore teaches us that such spirits don't seek revenge as much as they seek restoration, to be seen, acknowledged, and remembered as the human beings they once were. Skeptics might argue that Minjung's experiences resulted from a combination of work stress, sleep deprivation, and suggestion. The scattered files could have been the result of actual water damage, and the supernatural guidance might have been her unconscious mind, leading her to discover evidence she had subliminally noticed during previous shifts. The temperature changes and flickering lights could be explained by the hospital's aging infrastructure, and the security footage might have been corrupted by electromagnetic interference from medical equipment. Yet the memorial plaque still stands in Asan Medical Center's chapel, and the families of the 15 forgotten patients finally have a place to honor their loved ones' memories. Whether Minjung was guided by actual spirits or by her own moral compass, the result remains the same. Voices that had been silenced were finally heard, and institutional accountability replaced institutional amnesia. Sometimes, the most important ghost stories aren't about the supernatural at all. They're about the very human need to be remembered and honored, even in death. What do you think was really leading Minjung through those hospital corridors? Were they the spirits of erased patients seeking recognition, or something deeper about justice and memory refusing to stay buried? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true ghost stories from across Asia.